right. Okay. So, on today's podcast episode, thanks for joining me, by the way. We're going to have a discussion. And really, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Reddit. I kind of maintain a regular presence on Reddit, and there's a lot to like about Reddit, actually. But one of the things that Reddit does is it provides a place for a lot of people. It's like an online forum, of course, if you don't know what Reddit is. But Reddit is a wonderful place in a lot of ways. It's a wild, wild place. But one of the things that we want to talk about today, this is where it greatly benefits, right, is that Reddit allows people to come together in different groups, if you will. And this is going to be on the trades side of the house when we're going to. I was reading one this morning, as a matter of fact, and I thought this will be an interesting discussion to then take to the podcast space. So, and the question or topic of this particular Reddit post: what's the one thing about blue collar work that people with office jobs will never truly understand? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll through here and I'm going to highlight some of the absolute, very interesting posts. And then I'm going to interject with my own thoughts, of course, because, well, this is my podcast and I get to do that. So, and I'll read exactly what this person that, obviously created the post said, and then we'll kind of meander through it a little bit. And by the way, this is August of 2026. We're looking at basically a heat wave from today, which is a Saturday, until about Wednesday, I believe, of temperatures being up in the upper 90s. Of course, that makes the heat index be about 105, give or take. These are really hot, miserable days. And this is not like 105 dry heat. So before I even get into this podcast, because this is one of the things that actually comes up, and I'll expand on this a little bit more, but dry heat is way more tolerable than humid heat. When I've been in 105 degree dry heat weather, it's better than, I'll take that over 90 degrees in humid heat all day long. All right. So anyway, this is what he said, and then we'll kind of expand where we're going. People think the hardest part is the physical labor. Sometimes it is, but for me, it's showing up every single day, regardless of the weather, how your body feels, or what's going on in your personal life. Bills don't care if you're sore. I've met some of the smartest, funniest, and most resourceful people on job sites. People who can diagnose a problem in minutes, fix it with whatever's available, and still crack jokes all day. Blue collar work doesn't always get the respect it deserves, but it literally keeps the world running. So what's something you wish people outside the trades understood about your job? So I will go ahead and tell you that what he is saying is absolutely right. I have met some of the smartest people that can fix just about anything at all. They're very resourceful. They'll come up with some unique or ingenious ways to take care of problems or to make things easier, if you will. They'll crack jokes, all that kind of stuff. And do all of this, and then he says blue collar work doesn't get the respect it deserves. That is 100% right. Now, the romanticization of the trades, and I've kind of discussed this on this platform as well as many of the others, is a very weird thing for me to see, primarily because it's not like this slow grind out of for 4 decades, approximately, probably more than that, to be honest with you. But at least the 4 decades that I can say that I've been alive and paid attention and whatnot, I can see, obviously, where there was a lot of denigration. We talked bad about those who work with their hands. They are individuals who are less worthy. It's just that's the jobs, those jobs that they actually fill are, number one, they're less important. Number two, they pay less. And number three, it's because they couldn't hack it in, let's say, higher education or whatever the case may be. Now, it's all BS. None of that's true at all. And what he says here, it literally keeps the world running. He's 100% right. It's 100% true. Everything has been, is built and maintained. You think about some of the critical, and I mean absolutely critical infrastructure that exists today. And so it's been run, it's been built, maintained, and it continually gets to be improved upon with the traditional blue collar workers, right? Hands on workers, guys doing the work, the skilled trade, but it doesn't get the respect. So for 4 decades, I have seen this denigration. And it would be one thing if the switch was kind of gradual. We have this realization and we're, climbing out, but it's almost like a switch has been flipped. And what is taking place is that individuals, culturally, it seems like there's this switch from a cultural perspective where it's like, oh, well, we need to have that longer discussion and be, this trades are where it's at. And I think one of the various reasons why this is the case is because of AI and how it's there's this like almost panic like perspective from a lot of people about how it's, AI can do code and all this other stuff. And now the trades are in the spotlight in a different way. So it's very strange to me. But even if they're in that light, they're still denigrated. They don't get the respect that they deserve. Blue collar, the people that work with their hands, quite frankly, should get a lot more respect. So this is going to be an interesting, podcast episode diving into the Reddit world. And when I sit here and kind of add my thoughts to some of these people's points. So what's something you wish people outside the trades understood about your job? All right. Here we go. How long it takes, this is one guy's perspective, one person's perspective, because I don't know if it's a guy or not. How long it takes just to get set up for a particular task before any actual work gets done. We need to do X, Y, and Z on the 5th floor and there's no man lift. Okay, we need about 200 foot of EMT and we have to hand carry it. We also need fittings. Has anyone seen 1-inch connectors? There's none in the Connex, but I heard Dwayne has some on his cart. Okay, do you know where he's at? He's wherever, and that's another 20-minute round trip, et cetera, et cetera. This is 100% true, and I'll tell you, like, we were sitting there just yesterday. I was on a job running, and it took so long I need to go get a man lift, which is a piece of, for those of you who don't know, it's a piece of machinery that has a boom that kind of articulates up. You can scope out, but it lifts a man, right? There's a basket on the end of it. A guy gets in it and it will, helps him to elevate, to do work or to perform work elevated. Well, I got to go get another man lift. So I got to go all the way across the site to get that, to bring that over here to get everything going. And then we got to go over here and we got to find an air compressor and we have to bring that over to the job site. And then we got to go find a welding machine and we got to bring that over to the job site. Oh, we have to swap out oxygen and acetylene bottles, which are what we primarily use for torching. Oh yeah, we got to go get that. We had to get the air compressor because we needed to remove some pieces of stainless, and the torch will not cut stainless. It'll melt it, but it won't cut it. So we had to go get carbon arc rod, which is basically like welding in reverse. There's a lot of parts and pieces, and this is from an ironworker's perspective. He's talking about, like when you start talking about pipe fitters or electricians or whatever, like just what you need to do the job. You got to get set up. And you got to go find this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And oftentimes, okay, most of the time, you don't have this 2-hour window to get everything set up on at the end of one day to prep for the following day. You usually don't have that time set aside or, kind of carved out to be able to go do that. You're going to find out. And a lot of times you go to work, you don't even know what you're going to be doing that day. A lot of it's going to depend upon, quite frankly, who's going to be in today, what trades are going to be in your way, what kind of material is going to be delivered to the job site. There's what equipment is running, what equipment might break down. There's so many different variables that kind of come together when it comes to how long it takes just to set the job up, not even to do it. Many, many, many jobs, many tasks that a lot of people do out in the field. It takes them longer to get set up, to find equipment, to find material, to get everything where it needs to be, and then to actually perform the task. So he's 100% right about this, and that is so interesting because he's got his finger on the pulse here. Someone else wrote the retards I have to work with, and then someone else, drug addicts make for better entertainment. All right, so the retards I have to work with. Let's see. There are people. I was reading a book a while back, and this is the way I'll say it. I'm not going to call people retards. I'm just reading off what someone said on a Reddit post. But what I will say is this: there are people. I read this in the book, and I'm going to give credit where credit's due. I just finished reading a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth, and one of her colleagues had a statement that I thought was it was a very ingenious quote, and I decided that I'm going to begin to use it going forward, so might as well use it here. What I would say that you have on job sites is you have people that have 10 years of experience, and then you've got people who have 1 year of experience for 10 years. The distinction is clear. If you're a tradesman and you're listening to this podcast episode, then you clearly know what I'm saying. There are people who act like this is their first year on the job and they're 10 years in. And you're like, why is this so hard to figure out? Like, we do the same thing over and over again, guys. Come on. And then there are the ones who are the complete opposite, right? They've got 10 years of experience. In this case, that just happens to be the number I'm using, and they know what's going on, and they continue to add, if you will, to their experience stock. Whereas there's a lot of people that just make decisions. You're like, okay, yeah, he's a first year apprentice for 10 years. Like that's kind of the perspective, right? And to address the second comment on there about drug addicts, there are the recreational drug use by blue collar workers is a thing. I don't approve of it. I don't think it's definitely not something that people shouldn't be messing around with because that stuff wrecks people's lives. I have seen it firsthand, and I have worked around and actually known people who are legitimately trying to get clean. I know some others who have gotten clean, but I also know some who haven't. And I also have seen some who it cost them it cost them everything. It cost them their marriage. It cost them, their parenthood, their house, their livelihood. It cost them everything. It cost them everything. So while it is true that there are people who do recreationally use, there are a whole lot more, in my estimation, that get hooked. And if you're listening to this, look, at the end of the day, if you take nothing away from a podcast episode, hopefully you take this away. Don't go and mess with any of that stuff because it's kind of cool to hang out with the fellas, because that's not it. Okay. And for those of you who are, if you're really thinking about a career in the trades, like I'm always sitting here going, hey, you should know as much as possible. Ideally, right? You have a resource, and if I can be one, that'd be great. So hopefully I'm able to help people out in that regard. When I was growing up back in the late 80s and definitely during the 90s, it was, don't do drugs, kids. That's what it is. All right. Next comment I want to touch on: being physically exhausted after work and just how much that impacts every aspect of your life. Doing the work is whatever. Trying to operate like normal human being and handle life afterwards, even on days when your body and brain are so spent, is truly a burden I don't think many people understand. It can really F up your life and take a long time to learn to manage in a somewhat healthy way. 100% true. Doing the work. So I'll tell you exactly how this goes. When you go over to the Wealthy Iron Worker, if you go over, or even if you just Google it, right? If you just Google what are the pros and cons of the skilled trades, like you're just weighing it out. One of my article, right, the pros and cons of the skilled trades, is going to come up on Google's first page. And there's a reason why. It brings a lot of value to you if you're actively searching for that information. Well, in the grand scheme of things, when you're looking at the pros and cons, the top two cons, aside from it's dirty, but then it's also the weather, the elements. I don't mind the cold. In fact, I relish it. because I hate summer with every fiber of my being. Yesterday was Friday, and it's just hot. It's miserable, and oftentimes you're gonna have to wear, depending on what craft you're in and what industry you're in, you're gonna end up wearing a fire retardant shirt because of hot work, which is spark producing. For those of you who don't know, whether I'm using a torch and I'm cutting, or I'm carbon arcing, which is really loud and obnoxious, or I'm grinding, or I'm cutting with a grinder, or whatever. So I got an additional layer on, and it just so, oh, by the way, it's like 95 outside, so you got all these things that are taking place. You got all this work to do, so that's physically exhausting. And I'll tell you this, and if you're young, then this probably isn't going to resonate. But for those of you who are older, you know exactly what I'm saying, and you'd be nodding your head in agreement. The older you get, the more difficult the weather extremes are on you. For me, that's summer. I can do the winter. I can do winter all day long. It's not a problem. But the older I get, the more summer just takes me out to the woodshed, just gives me the old 1-2. So what happens then is you got to maintain a certain level in line with the first comment that I read at the beginning of this podcast. So you have to maintain a certain level, no matter like whether you're tired, whether you're sore, whatever. The job has to get done. The bills got to get paid, right? So you're maintaining some form of energy, doing the work, whatever it happens to be throughout the day, whether it's 95 degrees out or not. And then you go to get in your vehicle. And if you're like most people, you got to probably drive about a half hour away, probably more. And during that drive home, and by the time you get home, your energy level just tanks. I mean, it tanks, man. And if you get home, God forbid if you have to go out and mow the grass, or, you got to fix something or whatever the case may be, because you're going to be doing it on half energy at best. And then on top of that, and you learn this the hard way, if you're going to do something like that, you better do it as soon as you get home, because if you go home and then you sit down, that's a wrap, Jack. Give it a wrap. We'll talk about it tomorrow, because it ain't going to happen today, bud. Because now you sat down, and then what happens, right? Everybody at home or whatever. If you got people at home that are waiting for you, like I do, or your spouse or whatever works somewhere else, and then they want to go out and they're chipper. Why? You know, because they're because they're in an office environment or something that's a lot more forgiving than the elements that you're working in. And then there's this dynamic of this back and forth between you and those other people, because they want to go do this, and you know what you want to do? You want to stay home. I've been around all day. I've been out work all day long out in this. I don't want to go out in this anymore. I want to sit home right here and enjoy myself. And so then you have that dynamic as well. It creates tension. It's problematic. It's difficult. You've been out in the elements all freaking day long. And by the time you get home, and then, so for those of you also who are not, associated with the trades, and you don't really know, here's what happens. What takes place is this. Most of our schedules, I'm not saying that this is everybody, but most of our schedules, this happens. We work about 7 to 3:30 is typically the trades time frame that we work. I would it would flabbergast me to discover that someone works 9 to 5. That's for you people in the office. Which, by the way, I don't know why you like 9 to 5. If you do, and maybe you don't, and that makes sense, but because I can't understand why you like it. But 7 to 3:30 is, typically speaking, it's the trade schedule. Some of us work different, right? I know there's some people that work 6:30 to 2:30. That's a pretty good schedule. I know some people that work 6 to 3. I mean, there's variations, but typically speaking, the reason I bring the time schedule up is because guys, for two reasons. Number one, because most guys are getting up early in the morning. You're talking, let's say, 5 or earlier, depending on a bunch of different factors, right? Your work schedule and all that kind of stuff. And also, how far do you got to drive? What do you have to do to get ready for work? Some people want to go to the gym. Some want to sit down and take their time and have a cup of coffee and read, and then go to the throne room and all that stuff. But they're going to get up early, right? They're going to get up 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And then when they get off, this is the kicker here. Then when they get off, if they're working, if they're not working any overtime or whatever the case may be, if they're working on an 8-hour day, they're going to get off at 3:30. They're getting off at the hottest part of the day. So you're in your truck or your vehicle or whatever, and you've got the AC blasting, or you have the windows open, you got, AC that way. And then you get home and then you get out and that sun just beats on you and your energy level has obviously gone down and your day is wrecked. The rest of the day is completely wrecked. If you have not worked in the trades, then you don't know what it's like. And I forget where I saw this at, but somebody said something here recently where they were like, I'm convinced that the vast majority of individuals have a predisposition to like summer only because it was the 3 months when you were in, government school where you didn't have to go to school. So in your mind, you liked summer. But when you had to go work out in this day in and day out, no, not for me, bud. I don't want to do it. So I'm convinced beyond any doubt that the vast majority of people who work in offices or in less hostile environmental conditions, they just don't know. And if they had to go do it, there's like this thing of like, try to put yourself in my shoes. Come get some of this. If you like to go out and tinker out in the garden or pull weeds or do little odds and ends, but you know what happens, right? You go out there and then you get a little hot and then you come inside and get some AC and all that. Most of the people in the trades don't have that as an avenue. They don't have the ability to go and just sit down in some AC and just hang out and do whatever. They don't have that ability. They just can't. They have to go to work. They don't have to go to work. They can't. It's just amazing to me because a lot of people, and that's one of the things that I'm not even touching on, right? But there's a whole list of comments on here that are not, I'm not going to touch on or talk about, but there are a couple of like common threads, if you will. And one of them happens to be the individuals who work in office that sit here and say something about, oh, it's a hot day today, to somebody that works out in this heat. Like, bro, you don't even know what you're talking about. You should just like read the room and save that comment for people like you. Save that comment for people like you. Don't spit that out to someone who works out in this 8, 10, 12 hours a day. That's not what you want to do. So the heat effect is a very, I'm I kind of planting my flag on this because I'm not only am I staring down the barrel of heat indexes of 100 to 105 for a few days coming up, but it's something that I've been dealing with for 20 plus years. I started my 25th year as an iron worker, and I'm like, this is bananas. So the heat is a very real thing. When I get home at the end of the day, the first thing I do, obviously, is I got to go take a shower because I'm just completely dirty. And I have a specific set of clothes that I'm going to wear to work. And I'm not, I have work clothes and then I have, rest of the clothes. And I'm going to go take a shower. And after that, that's a wrap. That's it. Done. I don't care if it's summertime. You ain't seeing me outside, bud. Because the heat is just, it just wears you out. It just wears you out. If you got some friends, you got some family, you're thinking about joining the trades or whatever, there's nothing like the heat beat down that you get. The heat beat down is real. The heat beat down is real. All right. Next comment, worthy of inclusion on the podcast. Dealing with corporate nonsense that nobody cares about. I don't care about your feeble attempts at boosting morale. I don't want your company swag. I don't care about the profits and how good or bad we did this quarter. I'm not wasting a Saturday to go on some field day BS. I don't give a flying beep about our new DEI initiatives. I'm not excited about pizza parties and company cookouts. Pay me more money. let up on the forced overtime and leave me alone. So let's unpack that a little bit because this is a very interesting podcast episode. Dealing with corporate nonsense. Yes, 100%. He doesn't care about their feeble attempts at boosting morale. You've seen, if you've been around any time in the trades, then you know what comes. Like, oh, let's go ahead, let's have a pizza party. And most of the guys don't give a flying crap about that. And here he is saying it on a Reddit post. They don't care about it. You're not boosting morale, by the way, at all. You're not boosting morale one bit. The vast majority of guys in the trades, when they leave work, they're leaving it behind. They hit the gate and that's it. And I tried to articulate this in a master's class, having an open discussion on a discussion board, right? Where I am interacting. I'm the only person from the trades, from a blue collar background, if you will. And everybody else is either white collar or nonprofit. And they're like, we were talking about leadership and everything like this, about how people, like as the leader, you should be trying to draw out everybody's leadership, their potential and this and that, and develop those people and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, do you know how many guys come to work just for a paycheck? They don't want any kind of like professional development or any of that stuff. I'm here to come to work so that I can get paid, and I'm going to hit that gate and I am done. I'm checking out. I don't care about how you're trying to boost morale. Basically, the vast majority of tradesmen don't care about boosting morale. Now, there's ways to do it. But what he's saying is this corporate nonsense and the way that they believe, and I don't know if it's because somebody told them. I'm not sure if it's because there's this thing about, okay, well, this, I learned this in class or whatever, some bullcrap. They told me this, they told me that. I can tell you how to boost morale successfully. He tells you this, one of the things that he tells you, which is one way that you can boost morale. Pay me more money. Pay me more money. I don't care about, and he's telling you, I don't care about cookouts. I don't care about pizza parties. I don't want your company swag. Now, that last one, some guys, they do, right? They enjoy wearing, because then they don't have to pay for stuff. You know what I mean? They'll give me some shirts. I'll wear them, but it's not going to boost morale. Pay people more money. That's one bona fide, surefire way that you're going to boost morale. You can pay guys more money. And this goes, and see, a lot of this is intertwined, right? If you go back up, because in the initial post, it's like, hey, look, blue collar workers haven't been given the respect they deserve for a long time now. Why? And why? Because they've been denigrated and they literally keep the world running. I don't believe, personally, I think blue collar workers, just about every blue collar worker in every, industry, right? Whether it's iron workers, pipe fitters, electricians, whatever, should have been getting paid a lot more money than they currently are, even though wages are rising because of demand. And a lot of, like, let's say, institutional knowledge exiting out of the trades, the gray wave, retirement, whatever you want to call it. And so there will come a time, by the way, where you're going to find it very difficult to be able to boost morale. And even though I'm sitting here telling you, pay me more money is one way, you're going to have, that is a surefire way, like I said, to boost morale. But in the grand scheme of things, there will come a time where that's not going to work for you either. And we see this all the time. If you're paying attention, you see this happen. There are a class of people who will leave for a couple of bucks an hour. And they, somebody attracted them to their company or whatever the case may be. But other people, and what's far more effective, since we're on the subject, is going to be how your company functions, the company culture, if you will. Now, typically, the company culture, this is where he's talking about the corporate nonsense, but the company culture, how your company is run and how your day-to-day operations are, and whether I feel valued and my contributions matter, and all the stuff that you hear people, in the white collar world talk ad nauseum about, that you can't take what you do in the white collar and then plug and play in the blue. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all. So this is a funny comment because I see stuff like this. Well, I get company swag. Yeah, I mean, thanks for spending the money on shirts, but you're not improving morale that way. That doesn't help. That doesn't work. That's not what happens. And I'm going to add, this is not even a comment here because I don't think I saw it in this Reddit post, but at the end of the day, this is one thing that I wish people knew. If you're in the trade, if you're a white collar worker, spouse, or whatever, here's what I want you to know. I've said something about the heat already, kind of planting my flag a little bit. But from a leadership perspective, company culture, all that kind of stuff, what I wish people knew is that the trades are completely different in so many ways from white collar work in the office in that environment. Completely different. What you do to boost morale, what you do from professional development, what you do for incentivizing, how you run things, every single leadership, all of that, all of it. You cannot take what you think has worked or what somebody else has said worked in their office or in their white collar environment or whatever it happens to be, and you read this book because somebody blah, 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 blah. You cannot take any of that and think that you're going to take it, plug it into the trades, and it's automatically going to work. It's not. It's not. And the main reason it doesn't work is that you're dealing with a different environment, different people. You cannot take blue collar workers and expect them to be white collar workers and expect that whatever you did over here in an office environment, in a white collar environment, is going to plug and automatically. It's not going to work. It will not work. So the real kicker is going to be, how do you, I'm not even bridge the gap because I'm not even talking about that. How do you build this model? How do you build this culture? How do you build respect? I honor you as my employee. I honor you as a tradesman. I want you here because let's face it, there's opportunity everywhere. So how do I attract, and then even more importantly, how do I retain individuals so I can build up a significant workforce that is a thing to behold? And you can start by completely taking everything that you think you know, if this is where you're coming from, about office environment, white collar workers, and just throw it out the window because it's not going to work for you. You don't need it. Wipe the slate clean. Let's deprogram you before we can even begin to think about what we need to do to program you into the blue collar environment. Now that's what I wish people knew. And this isn't for guys in the field. All right. This is for, this number one, I'll say this. It's for you spouses who are married, right? Or dating somebody in the blue collar, and you think that you know what this guy is doing or what they, it works over here this way in your environment, so it should work over here. Nope. Toss it out the window. Take everything you know, throw it out. If you had to go spend a day in your man's shoes, my goodness, would you be grateful for what he does? Because it is punishing sometimes, especially, with the environment in general, right? With the heat and everything like that. If you had to go out there, you'd be like, is this what you do every day? Yeah, every day. So that's what I want you, for spouses. If you are somebody who is interested in the trades, this is not an apples to apples comparison. It's not even apples to oranges comparison. It's like apples to watermelons. Like it's the elephant in the room. It's huge. To me, this whole problem of people thinking that whatever they can do, and this really what happens is when you start to think you're going to run a company and leadership and all that kind of stuff, when you think that, okay, what I'm doing over here, I read this book, I'm doing this in this office environment, whatever, and then you think you're going to take it over here and it's going to work in the trades. It's not. And the ironic part is that when you try to implement this stuff, then you sit here and scratch your head and go, I wonder why it's not working. Well, one of the problems is because you didn't listen to me. No, for real though. You didn't listen to anybody who is actively telling you this is not going to work. And maybe, just maybe, there were some people who were saying this isn't going to work. I like to talk to those people because they were prophets in their day, if they exist. This is a completely different environment. You're dealing with different people. You have to, you got to completely rethink everything. Now, for those of you in upper management, those of you who are, let's say, engineers or PMs or, maybe you're even directors or whatever. And you've got your little, you're in an office and, you're running the company, you're helping to run the company and all that kind of stuff. Your environment is different. It's close enough to the white collar environment that there's some correlation there. But even your environment is different than the guys in the trades. And you can call yourself, I work in this industry. Well, yeah, you do, but you're not out in the field. So what I'm getting at is you want to build up company morale and you want to recruit and retain and all that kind of stuff, then even you have to think that what works, what incentives work currently for your PMs and people in the office, whatever, they're not the same thing. What works up there is not going to work in the field for recruitment and retention. It doesn't. That's what I wish people knew. That's one of the things that I wish people knew. All right. Moving on to our next comment. Don't want to plant my flag too long in that one. That there is no such thing as a jack of all trades. We have individual skilled trade sets and disciplines within those trades. No one respectable guy signs up to encroach on everyone's trade as if he is a genius of everyone's work while taking a disrespectful amount of pay for doing 5 to 6 people's jobs. Louder from the rooftops, please. What he is saying here, all right? Guys in the field, and you see this all the time, and this is one of the things that there's a book called 9 Lies About Work. I have a book review on my website. You can go check the book review out. It's a phenomenal book, actually. I like the title of the book, and I thought, well, this is going to be an interesting book. I read the thing in 2 days, 2 or 3 days, whatever. It was a great book. One of the points they were kind of addressing, when people are really good at something, that's what they're going to do. What companies and industries want you to do is they want you, this idea that you're going to be a jack of all trades. So I get additional value from you because you're doing this job, 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 but you're only getting paid for one. And that's the guy's point. What he said is, quote, no one respectable guy signs up to encroach on everyone's trade as if he is a genius of everyone's work while taking a disrespectful amount of pay for doing 5 or 6 people's jobs, end quote. What he's saying is companies, they want you to be like this so that I can get 6 guys' amount of knowledge and work out of you while only paying you 1 guy's worth of wages. That's what he's saying. I say his comment should be echoed louder from the rooftops, please. Why? Because he's 100% correct. There is no such thing as a jack of all trades. You take the ironwork trade in general. Let me elaborate on this. You take the ironwork trade in general, okay? I can break my trade up into so many different facets. For example, you have ironworkers that go out and what you call reinforcing or tie rebar. You have ironworkers that go out and do hang glass or install glass like window, curtain wall, etc. Right? You have fabricating ironworkers. You have guys that sit there and they will make platforms and handrails. This is ornamental stuff, right? So now we're into 4. There are ironworkers that do precast, and precast is just, I mean, it's like concrete. Like you go to your nearest parking garage, right? So precast. You have guys that do structural, which is what most people initially think about ironworkers. You have ironworkers that do miscellaneous or the smaller steel. You have ironworkers that do, and this is one of my favorite, probably my favorite facet, rigging. And I like rigging, machinery moving. I'll link the two of them together instead of giving them. No, you know what? They're separate because guys that can do some machinery moving, they may not be as good as those who are actually doing some heavy rigging when it comes to chain falls and whatnot. All right, you got ironworkers that weld. So we're up to 10. 10 facets. And here's the thing. If you think an ironworker, there are so few ironworkers. I could elaborate more on my trade, but there are so few ironworkers that have worked in every single one of those facets. And even if you have worked in so many of those facets, it's very likely that you haven't spent enormous amounts of time in each one, which means then that you're not as good in some facets of your trade as you are in others. It's just kind of how it goes. So how could I sit here and say, well, I'm an ironworker, but, in accordance with what the company wanted, I'm also a millwright. I'm also, an electrician. I'm also a pipe. I'm not a jack of all trades. I don't want to be a jack of all trades. I want to be a master in my trade. And guess what happens? I bring value to the company that I work for in that regard. There are so many different trades on a job. And I'll be blunt with you, this idea of jack of all trades began as a as an anti-union talking point. What do you mean I got to come over here and I'm going to get this iron worker? Well, he needs to be doing this too. It's an anti-union. Ultimately, it's an anti-union slogan and talking point. That's what they want. Well, I don't want to be a jack of all trades. I want to be a master of one. And you're going to get that value from me. But that's what he's saying here. And this is something that I wish more people knew. And here's the thing going forward, right? So with the trades and the way we're going and the direction things are going, with the job sites having about 30 years and 30, with the job sites having 30-year-olds and younger on the job and 55 and older on the job, that's a 25-year gap in the middle. Here's what's going to happen. Primarily on jobs, you're going to have this massive influx of people. It's not started yet because the statistics still ring. I think it's like for every 5 people retiring, 2 come in or something like that. But you're going to have this massive influx of people, and they're going to be of different ages because they're looking for gainful employment. They're looking for a career, but they don't have the experience. And you know what's going to happen? They don't have the time. The trades itself, the industry itself doesn't have the time to turn them into quote unquote jack of all trades. I've got just enough time to turn you into a master of one. That's what I've got. And that's my goal as a union iron worker, to instruct apprentices and to instruct foremen or the way that I say it, turn apprentices into journeymen, turn journeymen into foremen, turn foremen into superintendents. That's what I want to do for the next 20 years that I've got roughly in my own mind in the trades left. That's what I want to do. But I'm going to have to, as somebody who's mid 40s, and I'm bridging the gap. So I'm, if you're not watching this video, I got my arms wide out. I'm bridging this gap, if you will, to try and have conversations and retain the institutional knowledge, and then also pass it on to the younger people and to bring them up, the younger or inexperienced, to bring them up and help them develop and get developed into the specific person or the specific craft that they're in, turn them into a tradesman. I have my work. I and others who are my age or right around have our work cut out for us. And guess what? I have time to turn them into a master of their trade, not a jack of a bunch. That idea of a jack of all trades needs to go away. So louder from the rooftops, please. There is no such thing as a jack of all trades. Now, for those of you who are listening to this podcast episode on audio only, this doesn't concern you because you don't see the switch. But for those of you watching this from a YouTube video, you notice I have a different shirt on. It's a different day. That's because the last end of my podcast episode was corrupted. I didn't even notice it until actually I downloaded it and because what I do is I watch each one of my podcast episodes through to make sure that this very thing, right? I don't want to publish a podcast episode and then at the very end it just kind of dies out and you don't get all the pertinent information you needed. And it looks very sloppy, right? So to end the podcast episode about things that blue collar workers, again, from the Reddit post, would like for you to know, what I would say to you is this. There's an awful lot that they would like for you to know. I may very well do a multiple podcast episode series on this towards the, later on as time allows, and I see more, discussion, whatnot, because I don't want them just to all come from me, right? There are things that I can glean from other people, and they have perspectives that I don't. But what I will say is this. If you take nothing else away from that podcast episode, except for the fact of what I said earlier, which is don't do drugs, the second thing that I would tell you is this. If you are related to or know somebody who works in this trade or the trades in general, I would say they would want you to know that they go through hell every day to better life for their family, to better life for those who are connected around them, obviously for, their community, their state, the country, etc. It is a hard, hard job. Someone has to do it. And it keeps up the infrastructure. And so in the end, as we, kind of bring this podcast episode to a close, a little gratitude goes a long way. Some people have never expressed it to that degree. But if you ask, you pay attention, read between the lines, if you're grateful for the work that the people who are going out in the elements and, working in various trades every day, it goes a long way. It goes a long way. So there's a podcast episode in a nutshell. All right. So I really I appreciate your time, the time that you take to listen to the podcast episode. If there is something that you want to add or contribute, you can go down into the show notes on the description. You'll see the contact page. You can click on that. It'll take you over to the Wealthy Iron Worker, where you can then send me an email. I monitor them. I reply to them very quickly, and we can establish some form of dialogue. Thanks for listening. And as always, stay safe out there.